Welcome back. Here in our studios today is Mousbah Ahdab, former MP and Tripoli resident. He's here with us to talk about the latest events in Beirut and Tripoli and what this worrying development might actually mean for Lebanon. Thank you for being with us today. Let's start. I mean, as you've just heard from the above stories that we've been talking about, things seem to be calmer across the country today. Am I right?
Much better. Actually, everyone was relieved to see that Shadi al-Mawlawi has been released. But lately, unfortunately, all those who have been arrested have not been released, even though there hasn't been enough proof to keep them in custody. And this is like an organized mission in order to make sure that all the Sunnis will be against the army. While I would like to say very clearly that we support the Lebanese army and we would like to see the Lebanese army prevail, but the Lebanese army that we would like to see prevailing should not be the Lebanese army that would keep a blind eye on the weapons that belong to militias close to Hezbollah under the name of resistance, and consider the other weapons as terrorist weapons. So what we'd like to see, the state of Lebanon controlling and the state of law prevailing everywhere. And this is exactly the opposite of what has been going on lately. This is on one hand. On the other hand, if ever President Assad thinks that there's no revolution, there's no such thing as revolution in Syria, but he considers that there's only extremists in Syria and Al-Qaeda in Syria fighting the regime, it's not therefore that the Lebanese government should consider anyone supporting the Lebanese resistance, the Syrian resistance, or the Syrian revolution, or the Syrian people as a terrorist in Lebanon. And I think that President Mikati should understand that very well, because he comes from a very prominent family in Tripoli. And of course he would know that there's a lot of sympathy with the same families, because we're part of the same social fabric that exists across the borders between Lebanon and Syria.
Well, touching on what you're just saying about terrorists or disassociation, or how do we actually implement this within Lebanon itself, there are rumors at the moment that Syria might have actually given the green light to the Lebanese government, or to the army, let's say, to actually shoot the Sunni cleric. Well, the other day.
Syria is having a very clear strategy, and if you don't want to see it, then we won't see it, but it's clear. I think that the statements of Mr. Mu'dad in Syria were very clear, and the statements of their ambassador in the United Nations, Mr. Jafari, have been very clear. Mr. Mu'dad has said that there's no problem between the Syrian government and people over there, but there's a problem between the Syrian government and Al-Qaeda. And Mr. Mu'dad has requested the support of the international community in order to have the Lebanese army repress all those who go against all the terrorists in Lebanon. Now the question is the following. To start with, in Syria, I think that it is obvious that there's a revolution over there, and it's a revolution that matches what happened in Libya and in Egypt and all over north of Africa and the Arab world. I don't think that people appraise just because Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite. I think they did because he's a dictator. And it is very fair and legitimate for them to request freedom. This is on one hand. On the other hand, internally in Lebanon, it is not acceptable to say that whoever supports, while there is a lot of relationship between Lebanese families and Syrian families, that those who support the Syrian people in Syria against the murder regime, I would say, these people are terrorists and dangerous people.
Instead of that, we should be calling them sympathizers or supporters of the
Absolutely.
revolution.
And I think that what we would request as Lebanese citizens is dissociating from what's happening in Syria, because everybody knows that any fight in Lebanon, if it's for supporting Assad, it wouldn't have him stay in position, and if it's against Assad, it wouldn't have him removed from his position. So we would like to dissociate, and would like the Lebanese government to dissociate, but we would not like the Lebanese government, under the title of dissociating from what's happening in Syria, to be supporting the Syrian regime. This is not acceptable, and by the Lebanese public opinion in general, and specifically not in the south, where President Mikati knows very well that 90% of the support goes to the revolution in Syria, that people do not sympathize with the regime in Syria, but they sympathize with the people of Syria.
Let's just touch on one more question then. Do you think this is actually probably the last of Lebanon's troubles, or just the beginning? I mean, we have the King of Saudi Arabia who's even just expressed his concern and has asked President Michel Salman to stop sectarian strife. This has just happened, it's just been broken. And we're looking at Kuwait and Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, who have asked their citizens not to come. The US is urging calm. The US is watching its citizens, not asking it to move out. I mean, I'm British. I've been told to stay in the house. Is this the beginning, or can we put an end to this crisis that we're in?
I think it depends very much on the decision of the Lebanese government. It could be both, to be very frank with you. If the Lebanese government does not take the necessary measures to put an end to this division within Lebanon concerning what's happening in Syria, and to have the Syrian fights move into Lebanon, then we will have fights in Lebanon.
No matter what. So you're basically telling me here that this could be the beginning. If the Lebanese government
knows how to handle the situation, and if the Lebanese government knows how to put a limit to those internal divisions by saying that we in Lebanon would not want to have any weapons moving from Lebanon to Syria, even if they were moving to support revolution, and this should be forbidden. But on the other hand, that we will have to be very welcoming to all the displaced from Syria, because there are family ties in Syria, then I think that we can find a solution. But if we consider that anyone who supports the displaced from Syria, with whom we have family links across the borders,
we are calling them terrorists, then
we are not actually calling them terrorists, and we're calling those who receive them in Lebanon terrorists, then there will be a big problem in Lebanon. And I think this is why we have been telling President Mikati lately, we would like to have you implement your policy of dissociating. If you can do it, in order to do it, you need to take a couple of steps that we have been stipulating in the press. If he can, we'll be supporting him. If he cannot, this would mean that President Mikati, rather than supporting the Lebanese people in his political power, he'll be supporting his friends in the Syrian regime. And this is something that definitely will lead into a confrontation in Lebanon, that rather than leading into calming the situation.
Just a quick answer to this question that I'm about to give you here. Yesterday, we had Beirut MPs calling on Mr. Mikati to actually resign. He spoke out today and he said that is not going to happen. Do you think he should?
President Mikati still needs to find a solution. If President Mikati will be willing to support putting an end to this internal confrontation, and will be able, as a prime minister in power, to put limits to those exaggerations coming on one end, which is like people close to him should be protected by the Lebanese army. And also, I think that the Lebanese army should not be executing the requests of the Syrian regime. If he can manage to do that, I think that everyone will be supporting President Mikati. But if President Mikati will be just taking the title of dissociating Lebanon from what's happening in Syria, but in fact putting us Lebanese in support of the Syrian regime, then I think that President Mikati should resign.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks.
And still to come. The US Senate approves new sanctions against Iran as the UN nuclear watchdog chief says he expects to sign a deal with Tehran soon. Back up.